So for your first, what I call your signature assignment for PTA 204, I want you to compile just a short summary of a major health condition that involves a neurological system. And so essentially, I've tried to keep it as simple as possible. And I just kind of, what I'm looking for is for you to start to research a health condition, especially one that you are not too familiar with. And if you just have a special interest, for example, in one of the topics, such as CVA or stroke, you certainly can sign up to report on that health condition. But I think in particular, if you have a curiosity about a health condition that you're not as familiar with, I think this is a great way to learn and to become more knowledgeable and to help you this term. So I'm not expecting to be experts, but I do know you're all good researchers because I've seen your work last year in kinesiology, and I know this is not a real hard undertaking, even though it may seem like it because you've been away from school for 3 months. I have very high confidence you can do this because I've taught this class for 11 years now, and everyone has been able to do this. So I have high confidence in each of you. So what I start out with is just kind of thinking about someone you know. I think it's always good to put some context to some of these health conditions. You may have some trouble thinking of somebody. I know some of you have had less life experience than others, meaning that some of you are very young. Some of you have had more life experience and have had maybe come from larger families where there is more likelihood to see some of these problems. When you're involving more population, there's just a more higher variable or likelihood that you will see some of these problems. Some of you that have worked in schools or have had kids in schools may have seen children, for example, that have some of these health conditions. And those of you that have worked in specific care facilities as aides or have worked in rehab as even outpatient, you may have seen clients that have these various health conditions. So, and it's also an opportunity for you to tap back into your reference, we'll speak in French there, your reference center, and it comes along with your APTA membership to do some basic research. So, briefly, you're going to start out by clicking this link that you all can edit, and you'll see that up to two students can write a report on each of these various topics, except for Huntington's, where I'm having only one student only, primarily because this disease is quite rare, or health condition is quite rare, and there's 23 of you, so this gives, just makes sense to have only one selection, or one student report on something that's quite rare, that you may or may not encounter in your career as PTA. So you do that, and then you click your name in, so you got a topic, right? So now you're going to figure out, well, what am I going to do with this topic? We're going to research it. You have 2 textbooks that you can access. I'm not going to guarantee that all these topics are covered as thoroughly as some of the others, but I do know that the textbook does talk about, particularly UMFRID, all of these health conditions. Huntington's not to a large degree, to be honest, and Cameron does discuss several of these health conditions as well. So you have 2 sources already there. And I'm asking for 3 sources. You see that here I said 3 references. So this is where you can use your reference center. Now you certainly can use all 3 of your sources outside of the course, or outside of UMFRID or Cameron. Okay, so you can. There's no problem. But they need to be a source of some scholarship too. And we talked about that last year. So that's just a link. You have to log in, of course, with your member number and your password, and then you can access the PT Now research tool. And I know you all know how to do that because you've done that successfully last year. I just typed in multiple sclerosis, for example, and it came up with pages of articles. And some were quite descriptive about what the disease is. So those are just sources for you. I'm not looking for a lengthy paper. I'm wanting something fairly brief and succinct. So it's not a paper, it is an assignment. You're not going to hand write a copy and turn it in. I would prefer that you go into Moodle and just type in. I'm probably going to change the title from personal reflection paper to actually research, because that's what it is. So you go ahead and you put in your submission, and you can just, type it in, just like you have before. If you want to put in a Google Doc link for me, that's great. And if you are fairly old school and want to do an upload of a Word document or PDF, I'm okay with that, but I'd rather you type it in, or if you can, send me a Google Doc. That way I can do some real-time editing. It's very hard to edit PDFs. It's time-consuming, and it delays getting you feedback, which is why I'm not a real huge fan of PDFs. Word documents are a little more friendly, but I prefer you just copy and paste. There's going to be no grading on formatting, so that's good to know. No grading on formatting. You have to use APA formatting in terms of, so I'm not grading on margins. I don't want a real long paper, or excuse me, assignment. I really don't. Keep it fairly brief. The objectives are pretty small, right? So here's your grading rubric. I'm telling you to do this. Keep it small. So when you see Bloom's taxonomy, don't get jumpy. When you see that, that's just basically kind of showing you what you are doing in terms of a higher level of thinking. Okay, so this is a higher level thinking assignment, which is good, because we're kind of going beyond the basic black and white learning where you're actually employing some scholarships, which is great, scholarship. So a few paragraphs written about the medical problem, a few sentences about exercises you would recommend based on the health condition. I'm not asking you to be an expert in this area, just kind of from what you know, what you think could work. This is an area where it could be a little bit opinion-based, but if it's off base a bit, I will correct you and certainly provide some guidance. I want you to think creatively and add some qualifiers too. Like, for example, if you're talking about MS and you're advising someone to start running, I would question that, because MS is, whoever may pick that topic, is something that can be heat induced, and you don't want to increase body temperature too much with MS, or you could be causing a relapse, which is very bad. How would you and the PT take in managing a patient with this medical problem? Again, that's using your scholarship. You can use a textbook. And then how could other disciplines be involved in the case? This could be, again, opinion-based as well. And then a short summary. So that's it. And the affective domain is kind of what did you learn, and what was your most response about learning more about the self condition? You can say, it's a little tough, it's a little sad, because, you can talk about a personal experience and whether or not someone that's had this health condition or they've had a benefit from therapy. So that's worth 5 points. So there's 5, 10, 15. The last 4 is just basic punctuation, grammar. And that's the grading rubric on this. And so I had some examples up here too of how you would use scholarship sources to guide you into PT. So this is not opinion-based. This would be more opinion-based. How could other disciplines be involved in the care of the patient? How could exercise be helpful in this particular person? Cite your sources if you use something specific, but you can use some